I was 24 when I left trade school with a diploma in auto electronics and a salvage toolbox full of second-hand screwdrivers and wrenches. No connections, no startup money, just an old Chevy S10 with a rebuilt alternator and a vanishing clutch. My name's Lucas Medina. I'm 42 now, but back then, I lived in a tiny duplex on the edge of El Paso with my tools in the trunk and hope in my chest. Most days, I drove between body shops and small used car lots, offering to install basic anti-theft modules and whatever clunkers they hadn't sold yet. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and I knew my circuits better than most. One time, I fixed an entire tow yard's alarm grid for free just so I could leave my business cards on the desk. That's how I ended up at Rosie's Diner for a 3 a.m. plate of eggs, with dust on my hands and battery acid under my nails. That's also where I met Clara. She was sitting 2 booths over in a perfectly tailored skirt suit, drinking black coffee like it was medicine. She looked out of place under those flickering fluorescents, like someone who just left a boardroom by mistake and landed next to truckers and night shift mechanics. I caught her watching me wipe oil off my hands with a napkin, and instead of looking away, she smiled. "You're either fixing a car or robbing one," she said, raising her cup in a mock toast. I smiled back. "What if I'm doing both?" She laughed, and that was it. Just like that, we were talking. Clara was 29, an architect at a small firm just getting its footing. She'd landed her first solo client that day, a dentist's office with a too big budget and too vague ideas. She said it like it was a joke, but I could tell she was proud. She didn't brag, exactly. She just had this way of talking, like everything was going to happen for her eventually and all she had to do was wait. I told her about my dream of running a garage where I could design aftermarket security systems, real ones, not the cheap buzzers that came with imported junk. She listened like it mattered, like she believed I could actually pull it off. We started seeing each other after that night. It wasn't flashy, just greasy breakfasts and long walks down dusty sidewalks, talking about everything we wanted but didn't yet have. She liked how focused I was. I liked how she never apologized for dreaming big. Within a year, Clara moved in. By the end of the second, we were married. She started helping with the small stuff, typing brochures, making logos, picking up invoices while I rewired door actuators and reprogrammed chip keys in our tiny garage. We made a good team, even if we didn't have much. My name was on the receipts, but her fingerprints were on everything else. There were no shortcuts. Just late nights, solder burns, and coffee so strong it peeled the back of your throat. But I believed in what we were building. We both did. Back then, it felt like we were made of the same stubborn spark. Like maybe, just maybe, we could light something bigger together. The garage was hotter than usual that summer. The old fan above the workbench hummed uselessly while I crouched over a tangled harness of wires and a prototype module that kept shorting out no matter how many times I tweaked the code. I had bags under my eyes and solder burns on my forearms, but I didn't care. I was close, so close, to something big. It was called VNM-1, Vehicle Encryption and Neutralization Module. It wasn't just another anti-theft device. It was a new kind of identity lock, something that could pair a car's core functions to a single encrypted signature. I'd spent 6 months building it at night, testing it when Clara was asleep, hiding blueprints under old invoices in case anyone walked in. I wasn't ready for the world to see it yet. Not even her. Clara had started changing around that time. At first, it was subtle. The way she stopped asking how work was going. The way her face would tense when I said I couldn't make it to another networking mixer because I had things to finish. Then the comments started. "This again," she'd mutter, looking at the wires coiled like intestines across our kitchen table. I tried to tell her about VNM-1. Tried to explain how revolutionary it could be, how it might license for millions one day. But every time I brought it up, her eyes glazed over, like I was reading a bedtime story to a wall. One night, after I spent 12 straight hours debugging a voltage error, she came home from dinner with her sister and tossed a glossy catalog on the table. Inside were pictures of beachfront properties in California. "That's what real success looks like," she said. "Not rusted-out Hondas and dreams about gadgets no one's asking for." I looked up at her, exhausted. "You think this is just some gadget?" She shrugged, like it didn't matter. "Lucas, you're a smart guy, but you don't think big enough. You're still playing in the sandbox while other people are out building skyscrapers. Is this about your sister again?" I asked, quieter now. Clara's jaw clenched. She just got back from Venice. Her firm's expanding to Seattle, and I'm sitting here proofreading flyers for your side hustle. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? Her sister's husband had a yacht and a crooked smile, but he wouldn't know a Torx sensor from a toaster. I was trying to build something real, something that mattered. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in the garage until dawn, soldering in silence, telling myself she'd come around. That once VNM-1 was finished, she'd see. They'd all see. But she didn't come around. She got colder. She stopped helping with invoices. Started dressing nicer, like she was going somewhere important every day, even when she wasn't. Her phone buzzed constantly. Her laptop stayed closed when I walked in. Then one morning, I found the note. Just a folded slip of paper on the kitchen counter. Don't try to follow me. I need something bigger than this. Something real. She was gone. I called her sister. No answer. I called Clara's office. They said she'd taken a leave of absence. A week later, I found out she was living with Eric, her firm's managing partner. A guy who owned a condo with a view of the skyline and a collection of wine he couldn't pronounce. She didn't just walk away from me. She walked away from everything we built. And I sat there, in that garage, holding the module she said would never work, the one she called a garage fantasy, and felt something in me shift. Not grief. Not even anger. Just clarity. Cold, quiet clarity. I wasn't finished. Not even close. A month after Clara left, I walked into the garage like I always did. Same coffee mug, same steel-toed boots, same hum of the overhead fan that never did a damn thing. Nothing had changed. Except everything had. She never asked what I'd been working on. Not really. Never sat down beside me while I drew up the voltage maps or rewrote the security layers in the firmware. She called it a toy. A waste. Said no one would ever care what a guy like me built in a garage on the wrong side of El Paso. But a week before she walked out, I'd quietly filed the provisional patent on VNM1. 2 weeks after that, I was sitting in a conference room in Austin across from a licensing rep from a global automotive conglomerate. He wore a linen suit that probably cost more than my truck and kept adjusting his cufflinks like we were on camera. He didn't even blink when he saw the live demo. This tech, he said slowly, changes everything. The deal closed in 2 months. $73 million. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just shook the man's hand, walked out into the Texas heat, and drove back to my garage like I had every day for the past 8 years. The check cleared. The license transferred. And nobody, not a soul, knew. I kept my truck. I still bought my tools from the same hardware store where they know me by name. I didn't post about it, didn't celebrate, didn't tell my mother or the guys at the shop. And definitely not Clara. Let her sip wine on balconies and laugh at the small dreams she left behind. I had everything I needed, everything I'd worked for, and no one to thank but myself. The money sat quiet in the bank. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I didn't need to prove anything. I was done chasing recognition. Because the best part of winning was knowing you never needed to announce it. Not to them. Not to her. Especially not to her. It started with a letter. Certified. Embossed. Delivered by a courier who asked me to sign at the door like it was a birthday gift instead of a lawsuit. Clara Morales versus Lucas Medina. Alleging co-founder status. Claiming breach of verbal partnership agreement. Requesting a full financial accounting of future commercial ventures involving technologies conceived during the marriage. I sat at the kitchen table and read every page twice. Then once more, just to be sure. Clara didn't just want a cut. She wanted half. Of everything. Future royalties. Future products. Anything remotely tied to VNM1. The same module she once called a waste of time. Now she wanted to pretend she helped invent it. Her lawyer was slick. One of those silver-haired types with glasses that cost more than my first shop compressor. He filed motions filled with colorful language. Key supportive role, administrative foundation, marketing strategy contributor. They painted Clara as the invisible backbone of the business. As if her typing up brochures in our living room for 6 months made her the heart of the operation. I didn't get mad. I got ready. My attorney, Melinda Paz, was a bulldog in heels. Her office was lined with framed patents and glass awards, not a single one of them for show. She read the complaint once, flipped to the back, and said, "We're going to bury them in facts." We did. I brought her the prototype drawings. The timestamped code commits from before Clara even moved in. Photos of my original whiteboard sketches, dated, geotagged. Bank records showing every component I ordered before Clara had ever even heard the word capacitor. Melinda grinned as she compiled the case file. They're not going to make it past discovery. And they didn't. In court, Clara showed up dressed for war. All black, sunglasses, the whole bit. She didn't look at me. She just sat beside Eric and let her lawyer do the talking. He leaned on emotional narrative. A wife who sacrificed time and energy. A collaborative domestic partnership. A shared vision turned lucrative. Melinda didn't blink. She stood, opened our binder, and walked the judge through a timeline so airtight you could have hung it in a museum. Dates, emails, firmware versions, engineering notes, a USB drive with live logs of the original build process, all predating Clara's involvement by more than a year. When Melinda reached the spreadsheet showing Clara's admin support payments, a total of $3,200 over 2 years, the courtroom went quiet. The judge leaned back in his seat, looked over the rims of his glasses, and asked Clara's team a simple question. Do you have anything that contradicts the creation timeline? They didn't. Clara's lawyer fumbled, tried pivoting to moral arguments. Joint sacrifice, emotional investment, and something about supportive environments. The judge cut him off. This isn't about marriage counseling. This is contract law. He dismissed the suit in full. No settlement. No partial ownership. Not a dime. Clara didn't speak to me when it was over. She just stormed out of the courtroom with Eric behind her, muttering under his breath. I watched her leave, calm and unmoved. You can rewrite history in your head, but the paper trail doesn't lie. Later that night, Melinda called to tell me the firm was updating their success portfolio with our case. You just became a precedent, she said, laughing. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the ceiling fan turning slow above my desk. She really thought she could steal what she once mocked. She forgot who wired every circuit, who soldered every lead. This wasn't a dream. It was mine, and no one else's. 6 months after the court ruling, I packed up what little I cared to keep and left El Paso behind. The vineyard sat on 32 acres of quiet earth just outside Taos, New Mexico. It had a modest main house, a detached barn with high ceilings, and a dusty, disused wine cellar I turned into my new workshop. Grapevines stretched down the hillside in slow, deliberate rows. The property came with solar panels, a private well, and a back gate that hadn't been opened in years. It was perfect. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not even Melinda. I just disappeared. I didn't want to be a mogul. I didn't want to be famous. I wanted peace. After a decade of noise, soldering guns, slammed doors, court filings, and hollow laughter, silence felt like a revolution. Most mornings, I woke up with the sun, made coffee, and walked the rows with my boots wet from dew. Sometimes I'd pick grapes even though I wasn't planning to make wine. I liked the rhythm of it, the slowness. By noon, I'd be in the barn, working on new designs. Nothing for profit, just ideas. I made a tracking tag for classic cars that looked like an old-school cigarette lighter. I built a solar-powered sensor to monitor moisture in brake lines for vintage trucks. Small stuff. Useful stuff. I also started mentoring. Word got around in small towns. The guy with the vineyard used to be some kind of wizard with electronics. Local mechanics and high school tech kids started showing up. I let them in. I taught them for free. One guy, Randy, ran a dusty two-bay repair shop 30 miles east. I helped him convert his old diagnostic rigs to tablet-based systems for a tenth of the cost the dealership guys quoted. He cried when it worked, said it'd save his business. I believed him. This was what I wanted now. Not boardrooms, not contracts, just people who needed help and tools that actually worked. At night, I'd pour a glass of red and sit on the porch under a sky so clear it looked fake. The stars stretched forever. I'd sip slow and think about everything I'd survived. About Clara, and what she gave up. Not the money, not even the invention, but the man I became after she walked away. A man who finally belonged to himself. It was late fall when she showed up. The vines were bare, the nights cold enough to make the solar heaters kick on before sunset. I was in the workshop, tuning a proximity relay with a cracked oscilloscope, when the gate alarm chimed. Nobody used the front gate. UPS dropped off by the road, and folks who knew me used the side drive. So when I heard that chime, something in me stilled. I tapped the intercom screen. The camera showed her standing there, Clara. She looked older, though not in the way you notice from wrinkles. It was in her posture. In the way she shifted from one foot to the other, arms folded tight, like she didn't know what to do with her body. She wore a beige coat that looked expensive but hung heavy on her frame. I pressed the button. You're a long way from El Paso. She looked straight at the camera. I know. Silence. Can I come in? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no, just turn off the screen and go back to my soldering iron. But another part, the one that remembered a younger version of her scribbling notes for flyer layouts on the back of napkins, was curious. I buzzed the gate open. She walked the gravel path slow, taking in the rows of dormant vines. The barn doors swung wide, the little wind turbine spinning against a high New Mexico sky. Her eyes scanned everything like she was trying to do the math in her head, trying to reconcile this place with the man she left in a garage behind a house with leaky faucets. I met her halfway down the path. Nice place, she said. Thanks. She tucked her hands into her coat. Didn't think you'd still be driving the same truck. I like what works. She nodded slowly, letting that one sit. Then, finally, she looked me in the eye. I didn't come to fight. I crossed my arms. Then why? She glanced toward the house. I just wanted to see it. See you. I've had a lot of time to think. I waited, saying nothing, just letting the wind fill the space she once used to fill with ambition and impatience. I didn't know, she said finally. Not really. I know. More silence. She shifted again, looking smaller somehow. Do you ever think about it? She asked quietly. How things ended? I nodded. Sometimes. Usually when I need to remember what clarity feels like. She gave a sad little laugh. Not bitter. Just tired. I guess I deserve that. I didn't answer. We stood there like that, two ghosts in the wind, until she finally said, "Can I come inside?" I looked toward the porch, then back at her, and I said, "Yeah, but just for a minute." She sat on the edge of the couch like a guest, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The same woman who used to kick off her heels and sprawl across that old love seat back in El Paso now perched like she didn't know if she was welcome to exhale. I set down 2 mugs of coffee on the table and took the chair opposite her. She hadn't said much since I let her in. Just looked around at the house, the shelves, the quiet evidence of a life she no longer had access to. "You built all this," she said softly. "Yeah." She took a sip of the coffee, then set it back down. "It's beautiful. Peaceful." I nodded. That was the goal. A pause. Then she met my eyes. "Eric and I, we're not together anymore." I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't think you would be. He turned out to be, not who I thought. I leaned back, arms crossed. Most people aren't. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding band, or maybe just the memory of it. He was controlling. The kind of man who wanted me dressed a certain way, talking a certain way. He didn't care what I thought. Just wanted someone who looked good beside him at functions. I stayed quiet. Let her talk. "I thought I was choosing stability," she went on. "I thought he was the next level. But it was just fake. I lost myself in it." I tilted my head. "You didn't lose yourself. You traded up. You knew what you were doing." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't think you'd still be angry." I shook my head. "I'm not angry. I'm just not interested in rewriting the past." She shifted forward. "Lucas, I didn't come here to fight. I didn't come to claim anything. I don't know. I missed you." I laughed, not loud, not cruel. Just honest. "No, Clara. You miss what I became. You miss that this turned out to matter. That's not fair, isn't it?" I leaned in. "Back then, I was a guy with wires in the kitchen and dreams you couldn't understand. You called it a fantasy. You mocked it. And then, when it wasn't a fantasy anymore, suddenly you remembered my name." Her face flushed. "I made mistakes. But we were young." "No, we weren't. We were grown. You wanted a shortcut to the life you thought you deserved. And when mine didn't look shiny enough, you jumped ship." She swallowed hard. "I thought maybe we could reconnect. Even just as friends." I looked at her, really looked. She wore makeup now the way she didn't used to. Her voice was softer, a little worn. But the old urgency was still there. The need to be somewhere that validated her. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not him anymore, Clara. The man you left behind?" He stayed up all night wondering why he wasn't enough. He soldered circuits and hoped love would hold. But he's gone. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. "I gave up something real," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "And you got nothing in return." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was heavy. Real. She stood slowly, brushing non-existent lint from her coat. "Can I at least call you sometime?" I walked to the door and opened it. "No." She paused, then nodded. No argument. No last plea. She stepped out into the fading afternoon, boots crunching on gravel, and didn't look back. Some things, once broken, stay broken. And I wasn't the man who bent anymore. I watched her walk all the way to the gate. She didn't cry, didn't plead, just kept her eyes forward, hands tucked into the same coat she arrived in, like she already knew this was the last chapter in a story she didn't get to rewrite. The gate clicked shut behind her. I stood there a minute longer, the cold wind pushing gently at my back. The vines swayed below, leafless and still, but not dead. Just waiting. That's what the land taught me. Not everything that goes quiet is gone. Back inside, I turned off the gate camera and set the monitor face down on the workbench. I poured a drink, not to celebrate, not to numb, just something steady to hold as the sun dropped behind the hill. The house was silent, save for the hum of the fridge and the soft tick of a wall clock no one else had ever noticed but me. I sat on the porch and looked out over the property. The lines of the vineyard, the faint glint of solar panels catching the last light, the distant fence where rabbits sometimes snuck under, all of it mine. Not because I bought it, because I earned it. For years, I worked in the shadows, building something nobody else saw value in. People mocked it, doubted it, walked away from it. She walked away from me, but I built it anyway. I pulled the folded blueprint from my back pocket, version 4 of a new biometric ignition switch. One that would only start if the owner's heartbeat matched the encrypted signature. More secure, more human. I laid it across the table and picked up my pencil. No music, no noise. Just the sound of graphite on paper and a wind that had nothing to carry away anymore. There was no anger left. No regret. Just peace. The kind you don't get by winning, but by letting go. Letting go of needing to be understood. Letting go of being the one who always waited to be seen. And finally, letting go of her. The vines rustled. I smiled. Not in triumph. In peace.